It wasn't just a stage. It felt like a test. Ivanka Trump stepped forward with confidence, while Barack Obama responded with calm composure. What he said next became more than a reply. It turned into a moment of clarity. Inside the Washington conference hall, the lights were bright enough to make the stage shine. Cameras filled the back row. Every seat was taken. Politicians, reporters, business leaders, and invited guests were all waiting for one thing. A rare discussion featuring two major figures in American public life, Barack Obama and Ivanka Trump. The event was promoted as a steady, future-focused conversation. The banners around the hall read, "Building the Future, Leadership and Unity in Modern America." But no one in the audience knew what was about to happen. The atmosphere felt unusual. Polite smiles, quiet laughter, and that buzz that comes before something unexpected. Curiosity hung in the air. Obama and Ivanka had never appeared together on the same stage. That alone had the country watching. When the host picked up the microphone, the crowd leaned forward. "Tonight," he said, "we discuss what leadership means during a time of division and transition." The applause was polite, controlled. People were saving their reactions for what came next. The host then gestured toward the wings. Ivanka Trump walked out first, composed, confident, steady under the lights. Her smile looked deliberate and well-rehearsed. She gave a small wave, took her seat, and crossed her legs neatly. Moments later, Barack Obama entered. His walk was relaxed, unhurried. The applause grew, not loud, but respectful. He offered his familiar half-smile, the one that suggested he was used to being in this setting. They met at center stage and shook hands. Cameras flashed. The handshake lasted just long enough to feel symbolic. For a brief moment, everything appeared calm. They shared polite smiles, exchanged a few quiet words, and sat down on opposite ends of the stage. The moderator began with light questions about leadership, public pressure, and what it takes to motivate people in today's world. Obama talked about empathy and patience. Ivanka emphasized innovation and bravery. The audience nodded, listening. It was professional, courteous, predictable. But as the discussion went deeper, the tone shifted. Obama, in his thoughtful and steady way, started talking about truth. How nations depend on it, how trust can't exist without it, and how one of America's biggest current challenges isn't just policy or the economy, but recognizing what is real. The audience gave a soft round of applause. Ivanka's face didn't change. She listened without reacting. Then she leaned forward slightly, her microphone picking up every breath. When she spoke, her tone was sharp but steady. "Mr. Obama," she said, "how can you speak about truth when there are still questions about where you were born?" The entire hall went silent. No one expected it. It wasn't about leadership or unity. It was personal. And the impact felt immediate, like cold air cutting through a warm room. Obama paused for half a second, not out of fear, but surprise. His expression stayed the same, but the room shifted. Some people gasped. Others looked at each other as if asking, "Did she really say that?" The rumor she referenced, Obama's birth certificate, was old, disproven, and long dismissed. Yet Ivanka brought it back, right there live in front of the nation. The moderator's smile disappeared. Even the stage lights seemed louder. Obama stayed still, hands together, eyes fixed on Ivanka. She looked calm, almost confident, as if she had asked something others avoided. The silence stretched. Even the cameras held still. It felt like no one wanted to break the moment. Finally, Obama adjusted his microphone. He gave a soft, brief chuckle, not amused, but surprised. The crowd sensed something important was coming. His voice was quiet, yet firm. "Ivanka, that claim has been around for years, and it was proven false years ago." He paused, letting the statement settle. "But maybe the real issue isn't where I was born. Maybe it's why some people still choose to believe something that isn't true." The audience reacted. A few clapped lightly, others stayed completely still, watching. Obama wasn't angry. His tone was deliberate, careful. Each word felt precise. He glanced around the hall before looking back at Ivanka. "We're here to talk about the country's future, not to revisit old and disproven claims." Ivanka didn't look away. She crossed her arms, her expression neutral. But beneath the surface, the shift in energy was clear. The room felt different now, Heavier, sharper. People in the front row leaned closer. Camera operators tightened their shots. The tension on stage was no longer just political. It had become something far more direct. Obama's tone remained steady, but his eyes showed something deeper. He wasn't going to let the discussion lose direction. Not yet. He gave a calm smile, the familiar controlled smile that often carried more meaning than expression alone. I understand politics, he said. I understand that some of this is theater. But leadership isn't performance. Leadership is about truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable. The crowd applauded, louder than before. But Ivanka didn't react. Behind her composed exterior, it was clear her earlier remark hadn't landed the way she expected. Instead of unsettling Obama, it had given him the moment. The host, visibly uneasy, tried to move to the next topic. But the energy in the room had already shifted. No one cared about the next question. The audience wanted to see what would follow, how Obama would respond next, and whether Ivanka would continue pressing the issue. That was the moment it became clear this was no longer a simple discussion about leadership. It was turning into something else, a clash of viewpoints, a clash of confidence, and a clash over truth. Two influential figures, one stage, and a national audience watching. The atmosphere in the hall felt heavier now. You could sense the tension. Cameras adjusted carefully. No one moved. Ivanka Trump sat upright, her posture precise, her expression controlled. Obama, on the other hand, leaned back slightly, a quiet half-smile still present, though there was a sharper focus in his eyes. The moment wasn't only tense, it was delicate. A single wrong phrase could escalate everything. Obama looked directly at Ivanka. He didn't hurry, didn't interrupt. He allowed the silence to settle before speaking. You know, he began softly, I've been asked many questions over the years, but I didn't expect that one tonight. A few uneasy laughs moved through the audience. Obama continued. It's interesting. We came here to talk about America's future, yet somehow we're returning to old claims that were answered long ago. His tone stayed calm, almost too calm, but every word carried weight. Ivanka's smile returned. Small and confident. She leaned in, her microphone steady. Mr. President, I didn't mean to offend, she said. But leadership requires transparency. People deserve to understand who their leaders truly are. The audience murmured. It was a careful response, clearly measured. Obama didn't react immediately. He gave a slight nod, still watching her closely. You're right, he replied. Transparency is important. That's why I made sure the entire nation saw my birth certificate years ago. But even after the facts were public, the rumors kept spreading. Do you know why? He paused. The room held still. Because sometimes it's easier to accept a lie that supports your belief than a truth that challenges it. The line landed firmly. The audience responded with a mix of gasps and applause, building in volume. Ivanka didn't clap. Her jaw tightened slightly. When the noise settled, she spoke again. I'm not here to revisit the past, she said. I'm here to discuss leadership, and maybe the kind of leadership people are growing frustrated with. It was a bold point, and Obama recognized it. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Leadership, yes, he said with a faint smile. People are tired. They're tired of drama, tired of finger-pointing, and tired of those who confuse attention with impact. The crowd responded with approving murmurs. Ivanka blinked, taken aback. Obama continued. When your father questioned my birthplace, I understood the purpose. It wasn't about truth. It was about headlines, and it worked. For a time. He glanced away briefly, then looked back at her, his tone softening slightly. But Ivanka, this isn't about your father. This is about you. You asked a personal question, so I'll give you a personal answer. I didn't reach this stage because of any rumor. I reached it because truth has a way of holding firm. Applause rose again, louder and more sustained. Ivanka's smile tightened. The confidence was still visible, but the ease had faded. The tension was now clear to everyone. The moderator, sensing the rising pressure, attempted to steer the conversation. Let's shift back to leadership strategies, he said with a nervous laugh. Perhaps we can. But Ivanka wasn't finished. She leaned toward the microphone, her tone more direct. Mr. Obama, with respect, people want straightforward answers. You talk about truth, but truth and politics aren't the same thing. The room fell silent once more. Obama looked at her for a long moment, then smiled a bit wider. You're absolutely right, he said. Which is why I'm here giving straightforward answers. He paused. The truth doesn't need to raise its voice, Ivanka. It just needs to be consistent. The audience clapped again, this time with stronger support. A few people stood. Ivanka folded her arms, tension visible for the first time. Obama leaned back, settling comfortably. He had shifted the entire mood of the room without ever raising his voice. That was the moment he chose to go further, not to attack but to explain something. His voice grew softer, almost thoughtful. I know what it's like to be misunderstood, he said. When your father challenged me, it wasn't only politics. It became personal. It affected my family. It made people question something that never should have been questioned. But I learned something from that. He turned toward Ivanka again. Whenever someone tried to pull me down with false claims, I used the truth to stand stronger. That's real leadership. It's not responding to anger with more anger. It's responding with clarity. This time, the applause was loud and long. Some people even whistled. The camera focused on Obama's relaxed face, his voice steady, his posture composed. Ivanka sat quietly with her hands folded. She nodded once politely, but it was clear the moment belonged to him. The moderator smiled uneasily and tried once more to change the topic. Thank you both, he said quickly. But the audience wasn't ready to move on. They had just watched something unusual. Two very different worlds meeting openly. One side represented new confidence, the other seasoned experience and calm strength. And although the room buzzed with claps, whispers, and shifting chairs, everyone sensed the exchange wasn't finished. Obama had made his point, but Ivanka still had more to say. Her expression made it clear she planned to push back harder. The tension hadn't faded. It was still rising like a storm beginning to form. The hall was alive now. Quiet conversations spread through the audience like static. Everyone could feel the pressure building, waiting to break. Ivanka Trump sat completely still, but her smile had tightened. The confidence she had carried earlier was starting to show small cracks. Her eyes flicked toward the crowd, then back to Obama, who sat calmly, as though he had expected this moment. Obama hadn't spoken for more than 20 seconds. He simply watched, listened, and evaluated. The moderator shifted in his chair, looking from one to the other. You could almost hear him silently plead, "Please, someone speak before this gets worse." Then Obama answered in a voice that was soft, steady, and measured. "Ivanka," he said, "you asked me a question about truth. Let me ask you one." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. The room went silent at once. You could hear a pin drop. "Who," he asked, "is Barron's mother?" It was a simple question, only a few words, but it landed heavily. Ivanka froze. Her eyes widened just slightly. She blinked once, unsure if she had heard him correctly. The audience inhaled at the same moment. Cameras zoomed in. Reporters held their hands above keyboards. No one had seen this coming. Ivanka tried to recover, forcing a controlled smile. "Excuse me," she said with a short laugh. "That's not relevant." Obama didn't flinch. His tone stayed even. "Maybe not. But it's still a question. You asked for transparency, so let's apply it equally." The crowd murmured again. The tone of the room had shifted. For the first time that evening, Ivanka looked uneasy. She leaned toward her microphone, her voice rising slightly. "Mr. Obama, that's absurd. Everyone knows." He cut in smoothly. "Then there's no reason to be upset." A wave of nervous laughter moved across the audience. Obama leaned back comfortably, hands together. "If we're going to ask questions that touch on identity," he said, "we should both be prepared to answer them." Ivanka's jaw tightened. She wasn't used to being the one defending herself, especially not on a live stage with thousands watching. "I think this discussion has drifted off topic," she said, trying to steady her voice. Obama tilted his head slightly, almost kindly. "You're right," he replied. "Maybe we should bring it back." He paused, holding her gaze. "But before we do, let me make one thing clear." He faced the audience now, speaking to everyone. When people can question anything about anyone, their family, their origins, their truth, just because they dislike them, that isn't leadership. It's weakness pretending to be strength. The words were sharp, but calm. The audience erupted into applause, loud, free, and intense. Some stood, some cheered, others whispered in amazement. Obama raised a hand gently, signaling them to quiet down. Ivanka, he continued, I've dealt with this many times. I've seen how rumors spread and how they're used as tools. But leadership isn't about trading rumors. It's about rising above them. His voice softened slightly, almost like a teacher addressing a student. You said people want direct answers. They do, and they want respect as well. You can't offer one without the other. Ivanka's expression stayed steady, but her breathing quickened just enough for the cameras to capture it. The moderator glanced down at his cue cards, pretending to prepare the next topic, but even he couldn't look away. Everyone waited to see how Ivanka would respond. She opened her mouth to speak, but Obama continued. He leaned in again, his voice lower and intentional. You came here to challenge me, he said quietly. That's fine. But if we're going to have that discussion, let's base it on facts. The crowd reacted instantly. Cameras flashed. Reporters wrote rapidly. Ivanka attempted a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. She tapped her microphone gently, buying herself a moment. With all due respect, Mr. Obama, she said. That comment was unnecessary. Obama shook his head slowly. No, he answered calm and direct. What's unnecessary is questioning someone's identity to win a debate. The statement landed clearly. Another wave of applause followed, loud, long, almost overpowering. Obama let it continue. He didn't speak over it. He simply waited, composed, until the noise faded. When it did, he looked at Ivanka again and spoke softly, almost kindly. Maybe next time before we question someone's story, we should be ready for ours to be questioned as well. Ivanka looked down briefly, then back up with a tight smile. But the confidence she showed earlier had faded. The audience saw it. The cameras saw it. Obama had accomplished something rare. He shifted the entire conversation without raising his voice, without anger, without any personal attack. He had turned the argument back toward principle. The moderator cleared his throat and finally spoke. All right, he said awkwardly. Let's move on to our next question on economic leadership. But the room wasn't ready. The audience still watched Obama and Ivanka closely. The atmosphere had changed. The tone of the event felt different. As the cameras scanned the stage, Obama appeared calm, almost peaceful. Ivanka, still composed, looked distant, as if her thoughts were moving faster than her expression could manage. She had come prepared to challenge him with doubt. But now she was the one who had been challenged. Not with rumors, but with reason. Everyone in that room understood this was more than a debate. It was a lesson, a controlled, steady demonstration. And Obama had shown how to command it. The applause eventually quieted, but the tension remained. The air felt heavy, thick with unspoken reactions. Ivanka sat still, her lips pressed together, her eyes locked on Obama. She had walked onto the stage confident, ready to challenge, ready to lead. But now the balance had shifted. Obama wasn't just answering questions anymore. He was guiding the moment. He appeared relaxed, almost too relaxed, like someone who had experienced this dynamic many times before. He straightened slightly, a hint of a smile on his face, and when he spoke, his voice carried a quiet authority that didn't need volume to be heard. You know, Obama began, I've always believed that the louder someone speaks, the less substance there usually is. The audience laughed lightly, but the humor didn't ease the tension. If anything, it made people listen more closely. Leadership, he continued, isn't about winning arguments. It's about strengthening discussions. He paused, letting the point settle. Ivanka glanced toward the moderator, perhaps hoping for a shift in topic, but he remained silent. Even he seemed absorbed in Obama's pacing. You came here tonight, Obama said, turning to Ivanka, to talk about the future, and I respect that. But when you brought up something as old and disproven as the birth certificate claim, you reminded me how easy it is to pull the truth backward instead of pushing it forward. A few people in the audience nodded. The energy shifted again. This wasn't confrontation anymore. It was understanding. Obama looked toward the crowd, not at Ivanka. His tone eased, almost like an instructor guiding a class. We've all played political games, he admitted. I've done it. The Trumps have done it. Everyone has. But eventually you realize the games don't strengthen the country. Truth does. The applause that followed was soft and respectful. Not loud. Thoughtful. The mood had changed from excitement to reflection. He continued, steady and warm. Politics has become more of a performance. Everyone wants to win the moment instead of fix the problems. People want drama, not direction. And the real danger isn't what's said on stage. It's what we stop noticing because of all the noise. The camera zoomed in. The crowd was focused. Even Ivanka, still composed, seemed caught somewhere between irritation and reluctant respect. Obama leaned forward slightly, his gaze direct. When your father questioned my birth, he said slowly, I understood exactly why. He was building an image, strong, direct, unfiltered. It worked. But it also changed how people viewed truth. It made false statements seem acceptable if they were delivered confidently. He looked at Ivanka again. And now we're repeating that same approach. Ivanka opened her mouth to respond, but he lifted a hand gently, not to dismiss, but to indicate he wasn't finished. I'm not here to embarrass you, Obama said calmly. I'm here to remind everyone, including you, that power means nothing if it isn't grounded in honesty. The room went silent again. The sound of a single camera shutter echoed through the hall. We can hold different beliefs, Obama continued. We can even debate them. That's part of democracy. But when we begin questioning each other's humanity, when we make people doubt what is already verified, we stop acting like leaders and start acting like performers. He paused, then added quietly. And the world doesn't need more performers. It needs adults in the room. The line moved through the audience like a wave. People began clapping slowly, then louder as the message settled. Ivanka kept a polite smile, nodding to maintain her composure, but the point was unmistakable. Obama had shifted her challenge into a lesson on composure, honesty, and leadership. And he still wasn't finished. As the applause eased, Obama's expression grew more thoughtful, more serious. His voice carried a tone that felt almost personal. I've met your father many times, he said. We've disagreed on nearly everything. But behind the tough talk and the quick sound bites, I've seen someone who understands the political game better than most. The difference is that I chose not to let the game define me. He turned toward Ivanka again. His expression steady but not harsh. You're capable. You're strong. And you have a platform. But the real question is what you plan to use it for. To repeat old noise, or to create new clarity. The audience stayed silent, taking in each word. It wasn't anger. It wasn't dominance. It was guidance, direct but fair. Ivanka blinked slowly, her lips parting slightly, but no answer came. Obama leaned back again, calm as before. I'm not here to win, he said. I'm here to remind everyone that leadership isn't about being right all the time. It's about being real. The applause this time was overwhelming. People rose from their seats, not cheering like fans, but applauding the weight of the moment. Even the moderator, caught up in the reaction, smiled. Mr. President, he said with a quick laugh, I think you may have just defined what leadership means tonight. Obama chuckled softly and nodded. Maybe, he replied. Or maybe we simply remembered what it used to mean. While the crowd continued clapping, Ivanka gave a faint smile. But this time, it looked different. Less polished, almost reflective. She lowered her eyes and tapped her notes lightly, as if searching for a response worthy of the moment, but nothing came. Obama had taken a public confrontation and reshaped it into a lesson. One that didn't rely on shouting or force, only on clarity and truth. And in that hall with thousands watching, even those who disagreed with him had to acknowledge one thing. He had delivered a masterclass in steadiness under pressure. The stage lights softened as the moderator attempted to move the event forward. But everyone in the room knew the night had already reached its turning point. Obama had done what effective leaders do. He reminded the audience not of his authority, but of their responsibility to think, question, and pursue truth with calm strength. That message lingered long after the applause faded. The lighting on the stage felt softer now. The intensity that filled the space minutes earlier had settled into quiet reflection. The moderator shuffled his papers, pretending to steer the discussion to a new topic, but the audience knew the evening had already shifted. Obama had turned a tense exchange into something larger, something lasting. All eyes remained on him, waiting to hear what he would add. Ivanka sat quietly now, her usual confident posture replaced by a thoughtful stillness. Her attention moved from the audience, to her notes, then back to Obama, as if she was still processing everything he had said. Then, without any cue or hesitation, Obama spoke again. His voice was gentle, not the sharp precision of a debater, but the steady tone of a teacher delivering a final explanation. "You know," he began softly, "when I first stepped on this stage tonight, I thought we'd spend our time discussing the future, education, the economy, the issues people worry about every day." He looked across the audience, making brief eye contact with different sections of the room. "But somehow we ended up right back in the past, disputing facts settled long ago, talking about what separates us instead of what might bring us together." A quiet murmur of agreement moved through the hall. Heads nodded. Others waited silently. "And that's the real issue with politics today," he continued. "We've created a system where every disagreement becomes a battle. Where truth isn't something we value, but something we argue over." He paused, then looked toward Ivanka. "I don't blame you," he said gently. "You grew up in the middle of that environment. You learned from someone who mastered the art of attention. But attention isn't the same as respect." Ivanka's eyes shifted slightly, though she stayed silent. Obama continued in the same steady tone. "Your father has said things about you, publicly, that made many people uncomfortable. Some dismissed them as jokes. Others called them unusual. Whatever they weren't respect. When leaders mix personal ties with authority and principles, people begin to lose confidence in all of them." The room grew quiet again. No one shifted. "That's why I'm saying this," he continued. "Not to criticize but to remind. The nation deserves more than personal remarks and ego battles. It deserves clarity. It deserves humility. It deserves honesty." A few people clapped softly at first, unsure if it fit the moment, but the sincerity in his tone spread, and the applause slowly grew. Obama offered a small smile, though he didn't absorb the praise. He lifted his hand slightly to calm the room. "We've all said and done things that make us question ourselves," he said. "But that's the strength of democracy. It allows us to learn, to admit fault, and to listen again." He turned toward the audience, addressing them directly, his voice settling into that familiar, thoughtful tone many remembered from his presidency. "I know these are difficult times," he said. "I know trust feels scarce. But every time we allow falsehoods to overpower truth, we surrender a part of what makes us strong." He scanned the faces before him, some encouraged, some moved, others simply absorbing his words. "Truth isn't meant to make you comfortable," he said. "It's meant to make you think. It's meant to keep you honest, even when it's challenging." A pause followed, quiet but commanding. "So if there's one message I want everyone here and everyone watching at home to remember," he said, "it's this: a leader isn't measured by how loudly they speak, but by how much truth they can accept." That line struck deeply. The applause wasn't explosive, but it was steady and lasting. People rose slowly, clapping with quiet respect. Ivanka looked down, then lifted her eyes again. Not upset, just reflective. Whatever she expected when she arrived, this was not the ending she had imagined. Obama looked at her with a gentle expression, neither proud nor dismissive, simply composed. "Ivanka," he said, "you have influence. People listen when you talk. Use that influence responsibly. Every word we choose creates something. Either a connection or a barrier. That decision is ours." She nodded once. No reply. Just a small acknowledgement that she understood. Obama then faced the audience again. "I'll leave you with this," he said calmly. "In politics and in life, truth doesn't require protection. It just needs to be practiced. That's the legacy worth leaving." The crowd responded again, not with excitement, but with appreciation. The moment no longer felt like a debate between two sides. It felt like clarity. For a brief time, the room shared something genuine. Obama straightened his jacket and gave the moderator a small nod. He shook Ivanka's hand politely. She returned the gesture, her expression still composed but noticeably softer. less guarded, almost thankful. As Obama stepped off stage, the lights caught part of his profile. Steady, calm, and unaffected. The cameras followed him until he slipped behind the curtain. For a moment, nothing outside that room mattered. People sat quietly, replaying what had just happened. One person's composure had quieted an entire clash. One question, "Who is Barron's mother?" had shifted the tone. But the question itself wasn't what defined the night. It was how he concluded it. He didn't embarrass anyone. He didn't raise his voice. He clarified. As the event wrapped up, the audience left with a renewed sense of what leadership should be. It wasn't about sharp comebacks or viral moments. It was about truth. Steady, sincere, and patient. The kind that doesn't demand attention. The kind that stands firmly on its own. And as the lights dimmed and the last echoes of applause faded, one thing became clear. Obama didn't just win the room. He reminded everyone what integrity sounds like.